Welcome everyone. This is a video about a graphics card that I bought from eBay. The idea behind it being a nice cheap graphics card that I can do up, probably get working again, and get it functioning at its best. When I bought the card, it was described as having a dusty fan and in brackets can be cleaned. Now as you just saw in the picture, the fan is caked in dust. And as you can see, it's black. I've never seen dust that colour before, so it's debatable whether it even is dust. But there's something clogging it up, and the idea is to clean it. I did not test the card first, as I didn't want it to explode. So I've cleaned it first, not done any tests beforehand, just to see the end result once we're finished, if it's working, and how well it works. To start cleaning, just get yourself a toolkit, screwdriver, different size heads, find the right one, which as you saw in the video, initially I got wrong. Once you get the screws out, that's where the fun begins. With these screws in particular, the card hadn't been opened for about 7 years, I guess, and it was actually a little bit challenging. Just turning the screws was just destroying the threads. So I just had to push in with the screwdriver, loosen them very slowly at first, as you can just see there, and eventually the screws will come out. One of the main reasons for me making this video is so someone that doesn't know too much about graphics cards, how to take them apart, how to clean them, can get a better idea and a simplified version of just how to open a card and clean it. The reason why it's so important to clean a card, even if it doesn't look as bad as this one, is that if it is a 7-year-old card, or maybe even these days a 4-year-old card, it will eventually just get clogged up with dust. It will start to overheat, it will throttle, and overall the lifespan of the card, including this one, is probably going to be severely shortened. The fact that a GTX 770 still even runs today, especially in that condition, is actually a bit of a miracle. So when you do clean it, hopefully the end result will be that you do have a working card, but the risk you take is how long will it work for. You are, of course, giving it the best possible chance by cleaning it. As you can see, I've got the case off, and you look inside, you look at the fan now, and at that grill in particular, that is where the air is meant to be pushed through. That is just a solid, thick layer of dust. Barely any room for any air to get through. Of course, the person who was using this card, it looks like it's been used up until the point I bought it, given the condition. It must have still been working. I said how hot it was getting and how much air was getting through, I'd have no idea. If you get a earbud, or something similar of your choice, the reason I use earbuds is that dust just tends to cling to them, and it's quite easy to get into the little gaps, and as you can see by those thick clumps of dust, there was not a lot of air going through there at all. Once you get that dust off, that in itself is going to make a huge difference to the performance of the card. There's a lot more to do, but that in itself will just mean there's air passing through the heatsink, drawing the hot air away, and would immediately, even without cleaning anything else, probably improve the performance. With the fan looking like it does, it's clogged up with dust. I'm not sure how much air it's pushing, must be doing some. It is so unbelievably dusty on that card. As you can see, when I tapped it on the back, just to get some of the loose dust off, it's just pouring down. Now we start on the fan. This bit was particularly not difficult, but in terms of breathing in whatever that is, it was not ideal. A lot of the dust flicked out as well onto that nice carpet I tried to protect, which I did get in a bit of trouble for, but it all worked out in the end. You don't have to be particularly gentle when cleaning these parts of a card. Graphics cards are pretty well built, surprisingly tough. Speeding up here a little bit here just to get through the cleaning. As you see, as it goes through, there is dust spraying out. There are clumps of dust, they'll get caught in the centre, but we are making progress. As I mentioned before, the reason I'm making the video is to try to show people who are not experienced with graphics cards in any way, the sort of person who just buys the parts, puts them in their computer, and is happy with it. Of course, if you're buying a second-hand card, you know, so most people these days wouldn't buy a GTX770, especially in the current market. They are horrendously overpriced. Getting this for £44 when a lot of them are selling for around 70 seems like an incredible deal, but you don't really know what you're getting. And just being able to, in a very simple way, clean a card, if nothing else, can really save the card and not have to have that experience where a card suddenly just stops. You get the black screen and nothing else. I've only ever had one card that stopped working, and I wasn't even using it at the time. Just plugged it in, black screen, stopped working, and that was a generation before this one, GTX 670. That had cleaned, new foam and paste on. Unfortunately, cards do just have a lifespan. But for people that do not know about cards, that just buy it, maybe it's even a gift for someone, it can look better, it can perform better, and it really is not as difficult, and you don't have to break down the entire card like a lot of videos would suggest. Now we've finished cleaning the fan, as you can see, it looks a lot better. It looks like air will actually be pushed from the fan through the heatsink, and this is realistically what it should look like when the card is new. I've got just a normal wipe there, just a standard sort of kitchen wipe, I suppose, just to get the final bit of cleaning done. And once you've done that, look a bit nicer, get the last of whatever that dust is off. The next, probably more optional part, depending on how confident you feel cleaning the card, will be changing the thermal paste. What I would probably suggest is that once you've cleaned out all the dust, put the card in your computer, test it, see what sort of temperatures you're getting, because the thermal paste, even though it'll be dried, and it will be dried, it will still be doing something. A lot better than having nothing on there at all. You might find the temperatures are to your liking, and you don't want to take the rest of the card apart, because taking off the heatsink and putting it back on is a little more daunting than just taking off a case and cleaning some dust out with some earbuds or whatever you choose to use. But to get to the heatsink, it is different for all cards, but most cards you just remove those 4 screws and the heatsink will simply detach. As you can see, the thermal paste is completely dry. You can scratch it, poke it, it will come off in clumps. The reason why that's not ideal is, of course, it's just not conducting heat as well, but it is still doing something. It is still transferring heat to the heatsink, probably in a way that will still be good enough. Most people will use their cards for, let's say, 4 years if you buy a decent card. During that time, they will never change the thermal paste. Performance will drop, but not to a noticeable degree, and there's no point changing the thermal paste. Hence why when you buy a card from eBay that's about 3 or 4 years old, the thermal paste would have dried out by then. They will advertise they'll last for years, but not really. When you do apply the thermal paste, any paste will do from a recognisable brand. They're all pretty much the same, to be honest. The only one you don't want to buy is one that says it's conductive, which I would be shocked if they still actually sell those, because it's just very impractical. So any thermal paste you buy, that one in particular I think is just a Cooler Master one. I bought that from Amazon because it had the fastest delivery, good reviews and a cheap price. Same as I go for an Arctic MX4 for quantity, but there's so many you can choose from. They all make a degree or two of difference. That's it. You want to put a small drop on the processor, the graphics processor, put on the heatsink. If you don't trust yourself, you don't know how much to put on, you're not sure if it's worked, you can always just take the heatsink back off almost immediately after you put it on. You don't have to screw it in first, just put it on, make sure it's tightly on there, and see how far it spreads, see if it's spread enough for you. If not, clean it off, put some more thermal paste on, a little bit more. It's always better to put more on than less, because all you're doing is just squishing the thermal paste down, and if it comes out the sides, it's not conductive, it doesn't do anything, doesn't get in the way, and you're going to squish it the same whether you've got the right amount or more, and just come out the sides. There's a lot of videos you can watch online that will show that putting on too much thermal paste makes no difference to temperatures. So if you want to play it safe, just put more on. Then it's just a case of putting on the screws, doing from one corner then to the opposite corner, just to make sure the pressure's even as you're putting the heatsink back on, and that's back on. And now as you see the card there, that essentially is what it should look like when it was new. Of course, you will still see there are specks of dust in that fan. It's without being able to get in there with some sort of tool, there would be a tiny bit of dust on there, but compared to before, for all intents and purposes, it is like new. I've cleaned the inside of the case already, got rid of all the dust, so it's just a matter of putting the case back on. When you've put the case back on, do some tests. As I mentioned, one of the biggest risks with buying a card, this one had a particularly poor and misleading description, and the picture didn't actually show how bad it was, is how long is it going to last for? This is going to give it a chance to last a lot longer than it would if you hadn't done anything. Run cooler, run better, get the most out of it. But realistically, if I didn't know how to clean a card, I should have just returned this when it arrived. The quality was too poor. It may not last. The reason it was a cheap price, well, most likely because the person who sold it knew what condition it was in, but really a cheap card, sometimes you get a cheap card for a reason. With that aside, we have a very good looking graphics card. Do be careful when you clean the back, it can be a little bit delicate on the back for those bits sticking out. But the performance of the card, once tested, 85 degrees maximum, fans about 60%, max boost clocks, which overall is a huge success. As long as it lasts, that is a graphics card that is performing like new and looking very close to new as well, which is really how you should sell a graphics card on eBay. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you do find it instructional on how to clean and get the best out of a used graphics cards. If you do have any tips, please do put them in the comments below, and if you do know what that was, if it was black dust or if I need to call a doctor, please also comment below. See you next time.